Okay, just to make sure everybody's in the right place. This is the Boosting Efficiency with Action Buttons webinar. It's a part of the SugarU live webinar series. My name is Andrea Ayers. I'm a senior product trainer, instructional designer in SugarU, which is just the training department inside of Sugar CRM. I've been with Sugar for 15 years. Started in training, then went to professional services and back in training for probably the last I would say 7 years. Um, so before we jump into all the things that you can do to make things more efficient with action buttons, I just want a quick raise of hands if you have attempted or have done a action button um, before. If you've created one or you know how to create them, you have created them, raise your hand in Zoom and just let me know how many of you this is brand new to. Okay, looks like, well, no, almost half of you have created an action button, um, and half of you haven't. So that's a good ratio. We're going to go through and start off with pretty basic when we start talking about action buttons. And then at the end, I'm going to show you some best practices that I got from PS that they create for customers. So you can see kind of the full range of what you can do with action buttons. So just to start off, for those of us that are newbies, an action button is a custom button that you, by the way, don't have to know how to write code in order to create it, that you can create within Studio that provides some kind of shortcut. So it's supposed to keep you from leaving a particular record to go do a task. You can do it right there within the record itself. It extends Sugar logic. Some dependencies, and there's some calculations that you can put on a button in Sugar. And also it is kind of a piece of a workflow, and it can actually trigger a workflow to happen. We're going to do a demo today too. It's created in Studio at field type, and it displays in the record itself or on the header, or it also can display in other locations too, and we'll talk about those in just a second. So why would you use, but some of these I've already said when I talked about what action button is, but I'm going to cover them in a little bit more detail. So they enable your users and you, if you're going to be looking at a particular record, to quickly customize some kind of business workflow. So if every time you go to this particular record, you're going to do these 4 things, and if those things can be made into buttons, why not make them easier to do by just clicking on that button and something will pop up, a field will change, an action will occur. It also helps with navigation because you're not leaving the record, you stay on the record and do a particular task. And you don't have to know how to write code, which is good for me because I don't know how to do that. It also boosts your users' productivity by staying in the particular record or saving them clicks. They're going to be more efficient and more productive because they're staying in that particular record to do a particular task. It also streamlines workflow. Sometimes when a person is in a particular step, it may um, they don't people make errors and they don't always follow the same steps that they need to in a process that you have at your organization. And it's not necessarily a Sugar BPM process, it's just a process that y'all use for a particular task. So this can help streamline some of those parts of those workflows by keeping the user within Sugar, but also allowing them to do a particular step a whole lot faster. And which is the biggie, it helps improve the user experience, which can help with adoption too. So if things are easier for them, if they can see what they need to do on the screen by just seeing the buttons there that do some task for them, then why not go ahead and use that, which makes them want to use it. And also it helps with their own feeling about the application and their own experience themselves. So some takeaways that we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to create and configure an action button. That's the first section. Then we're going to talk about some real world use cases that simplify some of the daily tasks that our PS team have dealt with their customers. And then we're going to talk about some tips for boosting automation and workflow efficiency. And those are also some that I've heard from customers, some that my folks in my PS group have given us professional services. So we're going to cover those three throughout the presentation. Those are the biggies. So first, let's talk about creating and configuring action buttons. And the reason why it's create and config, because you have to create a field called action button, and then you're going to hit a button that's called configure, and that goes to an additional page that you don't see with all the other field types. It's just for action buttons. And the reason why it's under fields is because you can put it into a layout within like a record view layout or a record view dashlet layout, if you will, so that you can see it within the actual record itself, just like you can a field, okay? And this is mainly for admins, but I think it's great for end users to see also, because they can then be aware of, oh, we could add a button for this and button for that, and then they can go to their admin and say, these are the things that we'd like to add to our system. So there are a few stock, which means out of the box, action buttons in Sugar that already exist. And this particular use case is in the cases module, which is the module for those of you that are in sales. Cases is the module where you put into the system issues from your customers. So in our case, these would be where we put issues from you, the customer. So there are three buttons. One's claim button, close button, and unassign. So those three are all, if you want to ever take a look at them in the system, they're in the cases module in Studio under fields. And you just have to buy the data type, which is the field type, and action buttons will be at the very top of the list. So claim button is going to allow you to assign a particular case directly to you while you're looking at it. A close button will change the status of that case to closed, and you can see those buttons, by the way, at the top of the record view. And then there's another button that removes the assignee, so it just will blank it out of a particular case, right? So it had somebody there, they're going to click unassign, and it will remove whoever is in the assigned to field, the user, okay? So those they're there already. But let's talk about some best practices when we're discussing action buttons. So first of all, when you're thinking about what action buttons should I use, what are the types of things that we want to add into any particular record that we see within Sugar or that we're using, you need to identify the most common operations. So your list may be quite large when you start going through all the things that you can add. And I'm not saying that you can't add all of them, but don't start off with 100 buttons, right? Try to evaluate what makes sense within whatever rollout you're doing or how you're going to address them. If you've already implemented Sugar, it would probably be a best practice to first announce, after you've already decided what buttons you're going to use, announce to your end users, whether that means to go to their weekly sales meeting or whatever it may be, to create, these are the buttons that we're going to create, and these will go into effect on this date, and this is what each of them will do. So kind of a little demo of what your specific thing is. But first, you need to identify that bed list. Then you need to clearly label, okay? So think of the size of a normal button. Most of them are not extremely long. So you're not going to write a little book inside the title of your label. Be precise in what you want it to do and what it's going to do. So if you're going to create an email, what kind of email is it? Use as few words that still make sense that you can within that particular label. Here's a biggie, and I don't think people do this enough. First of all, when you first create your action buttons, you should be doing them in your sandbox or dev instance, whichever you want to call it. It's the copy of your production instance where you test everything else, right? So you are basically testing behind a curtain. None of your end users will be able to see it. But if, let's say, the sales director came to you and said, I'd like to add these 5 fields. I heard that we have this functionality, or I've seen it in Sugar. Can we add them in? Have that person, after you've created them, have access to your sandbox and test them. okay, along with you, but have them then select if they want some of their users to also test it just to make sure it's working the way that they've requested or they need it to. That's a great idea. Also, give the button a task-oriented name. So what is it doing, right? It needs to have an actual besides being clear, it needs to be what the operation of that particular button is going to be. Try minimize minimalism, excuse me, is key. So, and that doesn't have to just do with what the button is labeled as, but try not to get super complicated, especially when you first start or introduce buttons to your end user. Now, I'm going to create a group of buttons in my first demo that you may not want to do right off the bat, but I wanted to show you that you can have multiple buttons at one time being created and show you what that looks like. Okay. Also, use the preview display that's going to be on the right hand side when we create a button to just view what you think your button will look like. Sometimes when you put things in on the left side of the screen, which is the configuration, and then when you look at the preview on the right, you're like, ooh, that's awful color, or that's the wrong icon I want to use, or I need to change that word. That will help you. You know, so it's kind of your first step in testing. You know, you want to verify that's what you want it to look like. If you want each of the buttons to be separated, if you wanted them to be right up against each other, if you want them to be in a drop down, all of that's available in the preview pane where you can see what it's actually going to look like. Actually, it's called the layout pane on the configuration page. Okay, so the first step to creating an action button is to create a new field. No matter what module you're in, you go to the fields component and the data type is action button with no space between. It's the one at the very top. So when you go into a brand new field, it always defaults to text box. Okay, every single time, text box, I guess because that's the most common type of field that people create or are used to. I don't know if that's true anymore. So you'll have to scroll up to the very top and it's action button because it's in alphabetical order. So you're going to have to give the name of your particular button or buttons. So the only place that you'll see this, let me get my arrow out here. Hold on. Annotation. Which one is it? This one. This right here, the display label. That's going to show on a particular field. So it means it's in a layout. So this will only display if you're putting this button within the layout itself. You will not see this display label if you just have the button in the header. So depending on where it's going to be, this may be important, right? If you have more than one button that you're going to display within a layout, it may be a good idea to say this is what these buttons do, kind of like an overall. If these are all the buttons you're going to add to accounts at this time, then you can just call it account buttons, something like that. Very simple. But if you're going to have more than one button in accounts, you'll need to label them differently, and especially if they're going to be a field, like in an actual layout, you're going to add a row and add these fields into it. You need to be a little bit more descriptive. And the example that we're going to show in the real life example, next section, I'll give you an example of, well, you're going to see lots of examples actually, of the display labels and how they're different depending on what you're actually putting into the system. So let me go back to my regular arrow here. Step 2, when you, let me say this. After you fill in this information on this page, you're going to click down here at the bottom where it says configure button. Notice you don't have all those other data things that you need to fill in for any other field type. Like depending on what data type you pick, most of the other things below it, below comment text, are going to be different. Like a drop-down data type is going to be different than a text box, than a text area, than a checkbox, etc. Right? And what you can do in that particular field. So because we are going to potentially create more than one button, that's why it says configure buttons, because you're going to go into another tab. It's going to come up here at the top that you're going to then go in and configure. Now, when I configure my field, I always start at the bottom left-hand corner, which is the action. The action will tell me then what I need to put into properties and what I need to put into the layout. So there in the action section, there are several types of fields that you can create, okay? The actions that can take place. You can just do an assign to record. I want to change it to the current user, or I want to select a person I want it to be assigned to. I can compose an email based on an email template. And yes, you need an email template in order to do this one. I'm going to create a record, and I want some of the fields for that record to be populated, especially all the stuff that is required. You may also want to do like a status, especially if you're doing a call record, what you want the subject of that particular call to be, etc. Okay, so that's create a record. You can merge a document. You just have to have the template, the document template, in order for it to merge into. Okay. And by the way, if you've never done a doc merge before, there is a really great video on Sugar Club underneath training quick videos that goes through how to do a doc merge. Okay, I recommend that you take a look at that. Might want to just jot that down if you're interested in doing dot merge. Open a URL. So this could be simply, I'm going to do one a little bit that's for a price list or for a comparison chart of your products, or we're also going to do a demo if we're in a particular module and we want our users to go to a particular page, maybe in your documentation or any help articles you have that helps them fill out that particular information that they need, right? So open URL. You can run a report. You just have to tell it what report you want to run. And it also can update a record. So it can, two things, create a brand new one, brand new record that is not the record that you're in. So if you're in opportunities, you can have it create a quote, for example, or begin to create a quote. If you are in opportunities and you want to update a field, like I want to go from whatever stage it is now to closed won or closed lost, whichever, I can say just update the record. I got to tell it what field and what value I want it to update to. Okay. All right, so that's just that action section at the bottom. And yes, you can have one button do multiple actions at a time. I just have one action at the bottom, but if I hit that plus sign, it can add multiple options to that particular button, just that one button. Okay, so above, I've got the properties for that button. So I want to name it that makes sense. So this is a URL for our Sugar CRM price list. So I'm going to just call it pricing list. And I want to show the button text. I also want to show the icons. So I'm going to pick this one just happens to be a star, but there's lots of different choices that you can choose from. And I picked a color. So these colors are all standardized and they're not our colors, meaning it's not our Sugar CRM branding colors. It's just basic generic colors. And I've been asked before, can we change those colors? You could, but not within the UI. Okay, you'd have to do that on the back end. All the stuff that we're going to demo today is all stuff that you can do within the UI itself. So once you have the properties done, whatever you select in this properties field is going to populate this preview. And that's the next thing that you're going to, next panel you're going to make some changes into. Then I can see what I want that particular panel to look like. So I also can check, which isn't showing in this particular page, but we'll see it in a little bit, how I want that particular layout to display. Do I want it to be, oh, this is the action menu, that's why. It's on the button, there we go. I can say whether I want the button type to just be a plain button, which is going to have a space between it. If I use a grouped button, it's going to smack them all together, so there's no space between each button. They're right beside each other, or you can do it as a drop down, either way. Okay. And then it gives you a size. This is the default size right here, which is the size of all the other buttons in Sugar. There is a small, and then there is a bigger one, a large you can use too. Then I can decide whether I want it to be, display this label of the button, sorry, the label of the group which is, we called it account buttons or account button, whichever one. And whether you want it to display the button on the record view header. Do you want it to also be at the very top by the edit button or not? The action menu, which is the second tab within here, this one, you can also put it in the list view action menu, subpanel action menu, record view header, record view dashlet header, and the focus store. Okay. Okay. And then the last thing on this page is where you can add multiple buttons. Okay. Each one of them will have an action, a property, and a, sorry, not a layout. It may look a little different because we're going to, if we have more, you have to tell it how you want that to display in the button type field. But to add another button in this particular group of buttons, you just hit the plus sign and it wipes out everything you see here because it's going to be a fresh button. You select a new action, new properties, and then you can hit plus sign again to continue to add buttons. So each button can have more than one action. Each label that you created in the field component can have multiple buttons within it. Okay, so and then once step 3 is if you have a group of buttons, in this case we called it account button right here, or buttons, you can add that. This happens to be to the record view, add a row in from your toolbox because we're going to demo this in a little bit, and then pop your, it was over here, we're going to pop in our account buttons, and our button or buttons will display inside the record itself. And also, just as another example, that if you were going to do it also in the record view, you'd be able to see those buttons in the record view also. Okay. All right. So I'm going to demonstrate creating a couple of buttons for you, actually several. And let me change this, zoom in a little bit, just because sometimes it's hard to see in Zoom the entire screen here and what I'm clicking on. So the first button I'm going to do is actually, I'm already in Studio, so let me back out a little bit here. I'm just going to go to the home page. And if I were going to log in, and I'm logged in as an admin, by the way, because I have to go to Studio, and the only way that you can access Studio is if you are a Sugar admin user, because there's 2 user types, a regular user and an admin user, or someone, another admin, has given you access to them in a role, giving you access to Studio, okay, which is called, it's either developer or admin and developer in access type in a role, okay, so it's a type of security. If you want to learn more about how to create different roles, there's also a video on that in the quick hits on Sugar Club. Okay, so I'm going to go to my user profile menu and select admin. And then on my admin page, I'm going to scroll down to developer tools. Now, depending on if you are on the cloud with us or you're hosting yourself, this panel may be on the left-hand side. In our case, because we have Sugar Identity, it is an additional panel and it's on the right. So just look for developer tools. That's the name of the panel. And we're going into Studio. Okay. And specifically, we're going to create some buttons in leads. So I'm going to go to leads. I'm going to go down to fields in leads. Okay. I can do the same thing in the icons in the middle. If I selected leads, I could go to fields here. Both take me to the same place. Okay. So I'm going to first just check real quick if there's any action buttons. So I sort by type, and the first in alphabetical order is checkbox. So there's no action buttons. So I'm going to go to add a field and watch. See how it defaulted to text field? I have to scroll up. Text field is way down here, third from the bottom. Sorry, that's not correct. It's the very last one. That's text area. So it goes to the very bottom of the list. So we're going to go to the very top and click action buttons, and bam, it changes the page completely, right? About half of the page is gone, which is good. We only have to fill out so much. So then you're going to put in what you are. If you're going to display, which I am, going to display your fields within the record itself, okay, within leads in the record view. What do you want it to display for? I'm going to add 6 buttons altogether. What what do you want to label that? So in my case, I'm going to just call it leads buttons or lead buttons. Okay. So I'm going to, and if you've not done Studio before, you want to enter the field name, and I'll watch how this happens. Lead underscore buttons. Okay, so I have capital letters and an underscore between the two words. And when I click tab, it changes the field name to all lowercase, which is the way it wants it to be done. The display label removes the underscore, leaves the capitalization, and the system label, which is where it's in the code. So the field name is what's in the database. The display label is what your users see. Okay, all you have to do is enter the field name with capital letters and underscore and tab, and it will fill in the next two fields. You do not need to have a help text or a comment text. That's up to you. Help text will actually display if you hover over the field name. It will tell you what to put in a particular field. Comment text is something like Joe Smith requested this on 4/17 at 9 a.m. Whatever text, it's only going to be seen here by other people that have access to Studio. That's it. No end user will be able to see it. So I'm ready now to configure my buttons. I'm going to do more than one. So I'm going to configure a button. Like I said, I always start with the action first. So right now up here at the top, it just has this generic label called buttons because that's what this text says. So I'm going to start creating a couple of things. So first of all, well, I can type it, that's fine. I'm going to create a URL. Okay, so I'm just going to type in crm.com/pricing. Okay, I'm gonna, there is a way that you can also do calculations if you want to actually add some data fields into your particular action, you can. And this is where I can also have multiple actions per field. Okay, I want this to be real simple. They click on it, it opens up a URL in another tab. So I want to label it as pricing, and I want to give it a icon. So let's see if they, nope. Okay, hold on. Forget what they call it. It's all the way down here. Doesn't really matter which one you pick. I'm just going to do this one. And then you can change the color. So I'm going to make this one purple. And you can see the, over here to the right, the preview. Okay. Right now we only have one button. So it's just going to look like this pricing. It has the cut corners, the oval corners on this button. But when I add a second one, I'll then show you how you can display it a little different. I'm going to display, want the label to display in the record. I want the button to be in the header. I want it to display in the focus drawer on the dashboard. In the action menu, I'm going to put it in as these last three here, the focus drawer, the record view dashlet, and the record view header. Okay, so that's one button. I'm going to go up here to the very top and I'm going to add a second one. And this one is going to be based on a report. Oh, sorry, not that one. Sorry. We're going to do a create a record. And specifically, that's the default. What it defaults to is a call record. And I want to fill in the subject, which was acquire field. So we're just going to call this initial call record for lead. Okay. And I'm going to call the button itself initial call. I could put my fingers in the right spot. Initial call. Okay. And there is an actual phone icon. And there's the preview on the side. So now that we have two buttons, I want to show you real quick what they can look like. So we can group them, which means there's no space between the two buttons here in the middle. If it's just button, then it divides them. So it looks a little different. Or you can have it as a drop down. So it puts the first one in the top of the list, and then you see the second one underneath it. Okay. I'm going to, now that I've previewed that, I'm going to add a second one in, a third button. And this one is compose an email. So this one I have to have a email template, and I happen to have one. Product email. Nope. Okay, let's go search. Here it is, new product template. Okay, I can say who it needs to be emailed to, but I'm going to leave that to whoever is clicking on the button to display it. So this is your new product email. Okay, and there is a mail. Yeah, so let's do an envelope, and let's change the color, pink. And now there are 3, okay? So that's a compose email, a new record, a URL. I'm going to do assign to, just so you could see what all these look like. Assign to record. I'm just going to have the current user, okay? I can select a specific person. If in your internal workflow, you look at something, you click a button, it goes to that particular person. That's fine, pick that person. But this one, I'm going to say assign to you, okay? And pick another color. Teal's fine, and plus. Okay, and then another one. So that's assigned to. The next one is a report. Run a report. And yes, you have to know, or already, this could be a report that you've created or a report that someone else has created that you have access to, whichever report you want to use. And then I just have to change the button to pipeline. Okay, and color. So the primary color is just the same color as this blue up here at the top for the save. So yes, you can use it all as the same color. It's up to you. Okay, and then finally, I'm going to do a update record. I don't know if we did this one already. I don't think so. There it is, update record. And I just want to update a field. Okay, so I'm going to say this is a lead. We do have a status on our lead, right? If it's been converted, if it's in process, whatever it may be. I'm going to say this is a dead lead. So this is someone we don't want to call again. Maybe they're upset about something. That's fine. Status. Let's just call it dead status. Okay, that's not a great name. Okay, and a different color, ocean. All right, so those are all of those buttons were created with one field type, one display label. So when I'm done with all of those, and by the way, this is what it looks like in the preview, I'm going to click save. It goes back to the field, and I have to click save here. Now, if I want these buttons to actually show up in the record view, just like with any other field, once it loads and it saves that field, I'm then going to go to layouts and add it into all the layouts I want to. And in my case, I'm just going to add it to one just so you get the idea. Most of you know Studio already. So I'm going to add a row in because it has 2 blank fields in it, 2 fillers. And I'm going to grab my 2 fields, leads, that's what it is, looking for accounts, lead buttons, here it is, right there. Drop it in, save and deploy. Saves it in Studio and deploys it out in my instance. So if I'm in my sandbox, it just deploys in my sandbox, okay? So when I use Studio, I don't care if it's action buttons or anything else, I open up more than one tab. So you just have to go to that module, right click on it. This is just a browser function. Open in a new tab so I can test it, okay? So I'm going to go, and I opened up accounts, but that's okay. I just needed a new tab of sugar. I'm going to go into leads, which is this one, the little plant. Open up a lead record. Go to the business card. And there's the drop down of actions. It's also up here at the top. Okay. It's also, if I was in the lead list view and I use this focus store, if you haven't used that before, this may be new to you. So that little icon that pops up and it will say focus store. It also will have them in the layout. If I added it to that particular, because this layout that you see here is a dashlet. It's the record read dashlet. It's this completely different layout in the layout section in Studio. So you would have to put it into this layout too, but here it is in the header because that's where I asked for it to be, and I can use those functions. So if I go back, let's go back into the record here, and we're going to open up pricing. Just going to click on pricing. So it goes to Sugar CRM pricing page, right? So it did that one. That's great. The next one, it's going to open up a compose email. I did a horrible email template, obviously, but this is where you would customize it for the particular customer that you're working with. Okay, I'm going to cancel that. The next one is assigned to you. So let's go to the assigned to, show more. So here it is. It assigned it to me, Andrea. So whoever it was assigned to, automatically going to change it to myself. Whoever you are, right? Looking at it. The pipeline is the report, which I don't know if it will show up, but it's going to bring that report up in a separate tab. There it is. Perfect. And then finally, it's going to change the status. So let's look at the status right now. So right now, it must be on the more page. The status is, if I can find it, here it is. It's blank. Okay. I'm going to change it to dead. Okay. So it brings it all up in edit mode. I still can see that particular tab by going to the show more tab, and there it is. It changed it to dead. So all you got to do is click that button and then click save, and it shows the status of dead. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So let's go back to the slides real quick. Let me check time here. Okay, we're good. Yeah. No, sorry. Okay, so now let's talk about some real life or real world use cases for simplifying some of your daily tasks that you have to do or your users have to do inside of Sugar, just within their day, that have to deal with customer records. So some examples that, and these, by the way, are all the ones that are in the documentation step by step, but they're also in the help guide. The documentation section, the admin guide for your particular version and edition of Sugar very briefly talks about each of these, but they're walked through in more detail in a help article to kind of help you walk through a little bit more detail on what you should use for each one of these. So you can use it to escalate a case. You can, just like I made a record dead, you could reject that particular lead for whatever reason, changing the status. Adding a call record to an opportunity like we did with a lead, accessing support documentation, which I'm going to demo that one. And then you can also email an entire team that is associated with a particular record also. Okay, so I'm going to go through I think 4 different scenarios real quick in different modules and show you what you can do with that particular record. So the first one, I already did ahead of time because it takes a lot, there's a lot of steps in it, but we're going to review the whole thing. So I want to show you what the button looks like, and then we'll show you how it was created in the system. So this one, like I said, came from professional services, and this is in accounts. So in accounts, let me pull up an account record. We have see if it's in this, hopefully it's in this instant. Oh, I guess I didn't do it. No, 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 it's not an accounts, it's contacts, sorry. Here we go. Pull up contact record, doesn't matter which contact record. There we go. So we have customers that want to be able to do things a little faster. So rather than going and scheduling a call or logging a call or making a meeting or a note or a task and doing that by going down here to the sub panels and clicking on it or the quick create, they wanted a faster way to do that within the record itself. So for example, We just called it log activities. That's what's going to show up only here. That's the display label. It won't show up if I put it up at the top. But in the drop down, I can log a call. So first of all, schedule a call, which is actually going to bring up a call record drawer and automatically make the status scheduled. I can log a call, which will start it as in progress. I can also pre-fill some other things within it, but notice that it automatically connects or links this particular contact record as a guest to this particular call, which is good, especially if I want to send them an invite, schedule, meeting, etc., task, note. So it can do all of those tasks within one little drop down very quickly rather than having to move the mouse around too many times and too many clicks. Okay. So it's just an example. You could have put it up here in the header and have that same functionality right there. It's up to you. If you put it in the header, notice if I scroll up and down on the actual record itself, it stays put. So when you put it up in the header, it will always be on the display. So it's up to you where you want your fields, but think about those types of concepts or things that they're usually used to seeing. Another thing that we're going to add in is on an account record. Let's say you're on an account, you're talking to a particular customer, and you want to real quickly create a opportunity. So we want to add a button up here at the top that says create new opportunity. So I'm going to go to my other tab, go into accounts, because that's where the button is going to reside. It's going to reside on an account, but we're going to create an opportunity. So I'm going to create a field. I'm going to go in and add a field. And it's going to be an action button, and it's just one button. Okay, and this is in accounts called new op, and it's not going to be in my actual record view, so I don't have to spell anything out. It's not going to be displayed anywhere. So I'm going to configure the button. The button is going to be create a record, and which record is going to be an opportunity. Oops, put an L in there. Okay, goodness, my keys are off. Yeah. Okay, and then I can pre-populate any of the fields I want. If I want the opportunity name to be just plain new opportunity, and then they fill in what it is, that's fine. I also can copy any parent values from the parent record over to the opportunity. I can also create a relationship to that record's parent, and I can have it auto create. I'm going to have them actual, which means they click on it, it's created. I want it to come up in edit view so they can fill some things in as they're having the conversation with the customer. The button, I want to just spell it out, new opportunity. Okay, and I'm going to put a plus sign. And that's what it's going to look like right there, new button. I want it to display only in the header. Record view header, that's it. I don't want it to display inside the record or anything like that. So I'm going to click save. Oops, sorry. Select link before. Oops, sorry. Let's take these two off. Okay. And then I save the actual field itself. And then if this were one that I was going to put in in the actual record itself, I would go to the layout, but I'm not doing that. It's just in the header. So when I go and look for it in my account, I'm going to refresh this page, and it should be up here at the top by the edit icon in the header of the record view. Okay, and there it is right here. And it's just the same blue color that all the other buttons are. And you can see the label that I put in also. Okay, so that's another real life example. We already did one for the lead, making it a dead record. You can make it recycle, which is just another record type. You can make it a duplicate. You can make it say anything, right, that you want it to be. It doesn't have to even be a status. You can add a field to that particular one. The other one is, I'm going to show you how it can connect to our documentation, but you may have some special steps or workflow that you use when you create any particular type of record in the system. So I'm going to actually create a record in, a button in quotes that all that it does is it links to our quotes documentation section. And I want it to be at the top of the quote in the header. So I'm going to go to Studio into quotes. Studio and down to quotes in alphabetical order. Here, fields. And then I'm going to add my action button. So action button is the data type. This is going to be for, I'm going to call it help. If I could spell, hold on. Let's just call it help. You're not going to see it. It's going to be in the header. So I'm going to click configure buttons. And then I'm going to use a URL. And here's my quote section right here. Copy. I'm going to put the URL inside the URL section. This is the name of the button. So this is quote help. Or you could say documentation, whatever it is you call your particular thing. And then I'm going to change the color here to something else specific. And then this is what it's going to look like. I only want it to be in the header, the button to display. And it's just one button, so I don't have to change a particular type. If I also want to have it available in the record view dashlet header, I can put it there also. Okay, so I'm going to click save and then save again. And it's only in the header. So I'm going to go back once it loads. I'm going to go back to the quote and refresh because this was the previous view. Now, if you ever go to your actual record like I'm doing to see if it actually works, make sure that if it doesn't show up, you'll need to clear your cache first in your browser. Sometimes that means you have to close your browser and open it back up, just depends. I don't usually have to do that second part, but if it's not that, you might have to do a quick repair rebuild from the admin page, but that rarely happens. So this one is the help, and it opens up in a different tab, the quotes and quoted line items documentation. So that doesn't have to go to our documentation unless you think your users need it. But this could be something that you have internal, how you fix a particular problem. If there are things that come up all the time on this particular record, this may help them get to those answers a little quicker, but it doesn't make them lose where they are in the system. It's just another tab in the browser that it opens up, which I think is extremely helpful. So remember, this is just our documentation. You can have it linked to any page in your help also. Okay. All right. Let's check in the time. Oh, we're good. Here we go. One last section. And then we'll take some questions if you have any that you haven't added in already. Okay. I can click the right thing. So here's some tips for boosting automation and workflow efficiency. One thing I like about an action button, and that I've had people, well, how would someone know they need to do this particular thing? So to start a workflow or Sugar BPM to be kicked off. So I'm going to do a little plug here. If you don't know anything about Sugar BPM and you're interested, there are classes out on Sugar Club for you to access. There's actually 2 classes on Sugar BPM if you're interested to learn more about that. What we're going to do is talk about, one of the things we're going to do is add a button that is going to change a field that triggers a workflow. Okay, and that field doesn't even have to be a field that you display. It could be totally in the background. As long as the field is initiated to whatever the workflow triggers, then it can trigger that workflow to happen, which is a pretty cool feature. So some of the key benefits for automating and affecting workflows that an action button can do is that it can execute, it can have a one task execution. So this is very similar to what we did in leads, but if a particular record, and we'll do this on a revenue line item, but if this example it has here is if the button is called mark as one, as soon as something happens, right? Like you can make it dependent on something, you can have the record sales stage change to closed one. Okay. We're going to do one in a revenue line item that's going to, if the sales stage equals proposal price quote, we're going to have it bring up a create a quote button that's going to bring up the quotes record view to be completed. You can standardize actions across users, so you can ensure that all users perform a task in a consistent way, because the button is always going to do what it's designed to do. It's not going to change depending on a particular scenario. If you click it, it will go, which helps reduce human error. We all make mistakes. I do all the time. So buttons are great to help make those processes a little easier for you. It's useful in compliance heavy industries like finance and some manufacturing and like hospitals, things like that, schools, anybody that has some standard compliance heavy, even government, because we have customers that are government that use the system to make that standardized process, which is crucial. So they follow the law, or they follow compliance. This next one is what I was talking about with the workflows, is that you can have a button that as soon as you click that button, it changes a field and it will launch a workflow. Okay. Now the user doesn't necessarily need to know that part, right? All they're doing is clicking the button that, hey, a manager needs to approve this, or I need this status to change to this value. And then some people can be notified. Legal can be notified, and finance and HR, whatever your particular workflow may be, and whatever you want it to be, whether it is an approval. There may be a chain of approvals, notifications that, hey, this FYI, you need to see this, or some kind of escalation of a record. Okay. You can also have conditional logic. You can make a field dependent on whether it shows up or not on a particular value in a field, another field if you want. Okay. So, or if something changes from this to this, then I want this field this button to display. If it doesn't, then you won't see the button. Okay. So that's also nice that it only shows up when you need it. It also improves that user that we talked at the beginning, where you stay in one place, or your user stays in one place on the screen, fills in what they need to, and then they're back to work on that same record. Okay. So we got 6 minutes. I'm not going to speed through this, but I have two little examples I want to show you that I've already put in the systems that will kind of help with time-wise. So the first one is for revenue line items, which is all the way down here at the bottom. On a revenue line item, if you're not familiar with revenue line items, they are a record that is linked to opportunities. So you can have one record and multiple revenue line items. They all have different sales stages, different sales cycles, possibly even different users assigned to them, and they all roll up into one opportunity. Not all of them, but let's say you have 5. All 5 of them will roll up into one opportunity. Your sales team may decide they don't want revenue items. That's an easy little thing you can fix on the admin page. But if you're using them, this is where the actual sales deal is. And in this particular instance, we had revenue line items. So I'm going to use it. So there is a sales stage called proposal/price quote. So if I go into a particular record, I'm just going to, this is a closed loss one, but it doesn't matter. As soon as I change this to proposal price quote and I click save, the button appears, create a quote, right? If you're in the price quote stage, the next thing you would do would be create a quote. So I can click on create quote. It brings up the a new drawer down from the top of the screen that you can fill in for that new quote and click save. Okay. And it's right from that particular quote record, but it's dependent on another field. So let me show you what that looks like. So in revenue line items here, and it's a field. Let me show you what the field looks like. So how would you create something like this? So it's just a button in the header. So it really doesn't matter what the display label says. You just have to have one. So there is a little checkbox up here at the top that's called dependent. And when you go into the dependent, checkmark dependent, it's going to bring up a little formula builder, just like it does in regular fields. You need to have a function, a field. You can have a related module field value. You can roll up values, let's say all of the revenue line item values into the opportunity. All the opportunities can roll up into the account as one field, like this is the total amount. In my case, I just wanted the sales stage. So this is an if, right? If the sales stage equals, and that's what the equal is here, this value that's in quotes, which is what the drop down sales stage says, then display the field. If it doesn't have that, like mine had closed lost, it's not, you can't see that button. It's not going to be there, right? So that's what the dependency is based on, is on a particular formula. Now, if you're not familiar with formulas, I've done a little precursor here. I'm going to put into chat real quick. This is the link to the documentation for Sugar Logic, but there is a whole nother section in the help articles that goes through real life examples on Sugar Logic that you may want to check out too, okay? And some of this will be in the help at the end of the presentation, which by the way, I will put all the help on the same that you enrolled in the class on Sugar Club. That's where they're recording any outstanding questions and also the resources that I'm going to provide in a little bit. Okay, what time we got? We're good. Okay, and the second one I want to show you is that we'll start a workflow. Okay, so this one is in cases. So in the cases module here, confirm, sorry, let me pick a record. So I've added a field, and by the way, this field does not have to technically display. It is based on, see how I can manually click it for it to start the workflow, but if I don't want users to be able to click it, I just want them to click the Start Manager Review. It check marks the field anyway, and they click Save, and just the fact that that record is, that field is checked, that's the trigger on a workflow, and then the workflow is going to begin. Okay, so how do you do that? It is simply just a field in cases. So still studio, cases, fields, and it's the action button, not those, this one. So it's the name of it's up here at the top, but it's just to update record, and I'm updating the manager review field. That's it. As soon as it's check marked, whatever you want your trigger to be, if your trigger is the status of the case changes, any field on the case changes, whatever it is for that workflow, you can have a button, do those steps, all those things, because I could have multiple actions here, which you may need multiple actions to actually trigger a workflow anyway. Okay, very simple step, but it could save so much time for users, especially if you have them fill out multiple things in order for this particular criteria for the workflow to trigger. Okay, so real quick, I've got no time. So let me just cover this next section real quick. Sorry about that. It won't take very long. So I do have some resources for you. And like I said, I will put them to the Sugar Club page with these links. So not only would it be the Sugar Logic that I put into chat for you, but there's some help articles specifically for action buttons. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff on action buttons in the help articles, and even in Sugar Club. And even in Sugar Club, you can just go to the search at the top and put action button in, and you can see all the questions that people have asked about action buttons and the answers. And those may actually be some of the questions you may have come up with on your own. We do have several other webinars coming up. The next one is lead management on May 20th, and then dashboards on the 19th. Okay. And if you want to go a little bit more in depth about sugar BPM reports or just stuff that an admin needs to know, we do have classes out on Sugar Club also, if you're interested. Also, if you have any questions about anything that we covered today, you can always just email university@sugarserum.com and it goes to my entire team. Okay. I don't see that we had any questions in chat. Some of them that were asked, sorry, let me see this, were answered as we went along in the material. So I don't see any outstanding questions, let's say that. So this recording will be on the same page where you went and enrolled for the class, along with all of the resources with the hyperlinks, okay? You'll have a great rest of your day. Thank you for attending, and I'll see you maybe in the next SugarU live webinar series. Bye-bye.